One thing that I really strongly advocate for is just being able to say no. I know we talked about bunkers earlier, but along with that is being able to say no, either if it's a task that you're not good at, a task that you don't enjoy, delegate to elevate, right people, right seats, all of the buzzwords that we can throw in there. But being able to say no and staying in your lane is absolutely critical to taking that next action. And if you can say no to these 20 things that were distractors, you're going to be able to hyper-focus and taking that action, taking that step forward.
Welcome to the Boise REIN Show, your destination for creating wealth through connections in real estate and business. Are you looking to become a real estate professional? Do you want to start your own successful real estate business? Well, I'm your host, Matt Osojnicki. Join us as we learn from the brightest minds, industry leaders, and experienced professionals, equipping you with the knowledge and confidence needed to make informed decisions and thrive in the ever-changing real estate landscape. Your journey starts now. Welcome back. It's so good to be here with you guys. We love talking real estate. We love getting with you guys and hearing your story and just really giving back to the community and, figuring this whole thing out together. And speaking of figuring things out, today we brought on Heather Eshelby Goade. She has figured it out from not knowing what she wanted to do in real estate and finding, oh my gosh, we can actually do something with real estate, which seems to be most of our scenarios. We don't really know what avenue real estate is going to take us until we actually dive in, do the work, and figure out what we're good at and what we enjoy doing. And that's kind of the path that I have found that most people take. With that being said, Heather was a school teacher for 13 years. She accidentally fell into real estate when her husband, Corby, decided to keep his house, which was the wrong thing to do in her family. And most of our families around here, they'll say, like, you can't have more than one home. Don't invest your money. Save, save, save. That turned into, holy cow, we can actually make something out of this. And we're going to get into that story today. So without further ado, Heather's here to speak with you guys today. She speaks at a lot of events. She's spoken at Invest Her, and she's built a big business in property management that we're going to dive into today. So Heather, why don't you bring the audience a little bit up to speed about where you came from and where you're at today?
Sure. Thank you. That was spot on introduction. I feel like we're definitely from a much more humble background. Investment was not in my future. I didn't think about, investment was you put money in the bank, you put money in CDs, and that's where it's safe. My parents were very humble immigrants to this country, and my dad had a W-2 job that he was very, very dedicated towards. My mom was the daughter of a farmer from a World War II background. So it was definitely something that if your money wasn't in the bank, it was not safe. So who am I today? I still consider myself a teacher. I was a public school teacher for 13 years until I became a mom. And now, first and foremost, I'm definitely a mom. I have 3 lovely children that completely float my husband and I, our boat. And also we run a property management company, and my husband does the real estate side with investors, and we both try to educate our clients, and we're happier for it.
I love that. Some of the most successful people I've seen in real estate have built a business around real estate. It's not just investing in one single family home or trying to get a duplex, but some of the more successful people, like I said, have built something, not just in real estate, but like built a community around it and are really trying to help others. And I found that you guys have really done a great job at that. And I want to get into that a little bit. So tell us a little more on the story, how you accidentally fell into real estate, because for most people just trying to get started, it's kind of how it happens. You have to put in the work. You have to take action.
Right.
And how did that look like? What did that look like for you?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So we found this house on a neighborhood that we just absolutely loved. And we decided before we were even engaged to purchase the home together. And we just kind of jumped into it. I decided I needed to sell my home immediately, because why hold any type of real estate, right? That's a very scary thing. And we needed the down payment. Again, as a teacher, you make very little. We didn't have a ton squirreled away. And at that time, Corby was working for a nonprofit. So again, we didn't have a lot of money. We needed to sell the houses that we were living in respectively. But he came to me and said, well, why would you sell your house? What do you mean? What other option is there? And he explained to me that he was going to hold on to his house and he was going to put a tenant in there. And that was one of the most terrifying moments for me because I just can't imagine, what are you going to do? What happens if they don't pay rent for 1 month and we're responsible for that mortgage and we're just trying to get off the ground and we're moving in and creating this life together. So it definitely was painful, scary, all of the things that, the analysis paralysis, all of that stuff was coming to fruition for me. And he just kind of decided like, okay, we're going to hold on to this one and see how it goes. And the handshake agreement was, I'm not going to hear about it. I'm not going to be involved with cutting the lawn. I'm not going to take any phone calls about the clogged toilet at 3 a.m. No, this is all on you. I can't, I don't have the anxiety, I don't have the bandwidth for this.
Yeah.
So, fast forward a little bit, and 13 years into my career, I gave birth to our son the 3rd week of the school year. And I found myself needing to kind of fill the time at home besides just, learning how to be a mom. I found myself like, oh, well, I can tinker with the books. I can tinker with some of this management stuff. I can take the load off maybe a little bit.
You found this while you were at home?
Yes.
Like on maternity leave with your newborn.
Yeah.
Okay.
I needed something else to do besides just, I'm used to helping. I'm used to doing. I'm used to working. Even when I was teaching, I also tutored and I also was a coach. I always was doing something. So to be at home on maternity leave, not minimizing that at all, it was very busy.
Oh, totally.
But it was also it came very natural. So what do I do with the rest of my day? And kind of started tinkering around with the management side of things. And when I was diving into the books and the math one day, I realized, wait a second, you're doing this all wrong, honey. And we're making some residual money. How is this possible? So that handshake agreement kind of started to fizzle away. And I started to step into things a little bit more and more. And then, things tend to grow organically. Corby was making some more connections with other investors in the area. And before our son turned 2, we picked up 2 additional duplexes. So now I had an additional 4 doors to manage and to tinker around with. And just kind of grew from there, honestly.
That's a big mindset shift to go from teacher to managing 4 doors.
Yeah, probably so.
And you guys are doing this by yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Still not thinking that it's like an investment opportunity. Like you still have your careers. You're still working your jobs.
Yes. Yeah. So the big shift that happened the big shift that got us away from going back into the classroom or going back into a W-2 job was at about a month old, my son had a heart condition that was undetected prior. He required a lot of medication. He didn't tolerate the medication well. He's grown out of it. It turned out that it was a totally benign thing. But that mindset shift, being able to I'm not paying somebody else to raise my child. I have to be here. I have to give him the medication. I can't go back to the classroom. I adored the classroom, but my identity was now mom. And alongside that was these 4 doors. And we started doing that well. And we started learning some of the lessons along the way of, what do you do when you have this first investment? How do you find tenants? What is a good tenant? How do you screen for tenants? All of those kind of procedural things we learned from scratch. And
you kind of have to. You do, because if you don't learn those things yourself, you don't know what right looks like.
Right.
So let's get into that a little bit.
Okay.
What were some of the mistakes that really stand out? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't think about getting the lawn mowed or checking up on our tenants. Like, what are some things that stick out?
Oh, the biggest mistake was the very first tenant that we placed. We weren't doing regular drive-bys. We weren't doing regular check-ins. We weren't just keeping tabs on this person. It happened to be a Section 8 tenant that, we were getting the checks every month, but the person just kind of started going silent. And one day we happened to be in the neighborhood. over just, having a barbecue with a friend in the neighborhood. And when we drove by the house, we noticed that all of the cars were different. It wasn't the same cars that our tenant had before. We started noticing there was more trash in the yard. There were more things that were going awry. It didn't look right. It didn't feel right. Turns out that she was in jail. And so we ended up having to completely redo the house when we finally got possession back. We had a judgment against her, all of this kind of stuff. Like that was kind of the nightmare ending. And it's a pretty atypical ending. What happened with that one is that we learned we didn't screen right at all. We just, whoever came around that seemed like a nice enough individual, our first rental, right?
Mm-hmm.
She seems like a nice enough individual. We'll put her in there. And she was not qualified at all. And landlord references, I'm sure that if we would have run them, would have been horrible. And there was no credit score. There was no background check. There was no anything. We didn't
You didn't know what you didn't know.
Exactly. And so that was the biggest mistake.
So when screening for tenants today, what are some of the major things that you like to look for? Like if there was a top 3 things for people to look for.
Well, so I'll talk a little bit more about the procedure of it. I feel like the biggest thing with screening tenants is consistency. You have to be consistent. You have to have a published policy, however you do it, especially, from a professional management standpoint. We cannot treat anybody with any kind of preference. You can't show any kind of, I'm going to lean this way or I'm going to pick this person. You don't do that. You absolutely have a policy that you establish and you stick to that policy. We do screen for credit. We tend to see that there's a pretty direct correlation between if you care for your finances and if you have a good credit score, chances are you're probably also going to care for the property. So that's a big one. Landlord references are also, we look for a professional management company, not a mom and pop that just kind of wants to get the tenant out. And then we look at income and how long they've been in the job. There's a number of pieces that we look for, but I think that those would be the biggest top 3 to answer your question.
Yeah. I want to ask a few more mistakes that you've learned in the early days. So definitely screening tenants is one major mistake.
Yeah.
Can you think of any system mistakes or contractor mistakes or home repair, asset management mistakes that you made?
Sure. Back before we had a company, before we had a corporate veil, essentially, we definitely made the mistake of letting our tenants know that we were the owners of the property. And so when taxes started creeping up and we needed to have a modest 3 to 5% increase in rent to cover things like taxes or capital expenses, or, oh gosh, we need to replace a roof in a couple of years, let's start kind of, banking for that. If we had to increase the rent and they knew that we were the owners, that was a lot harder to navigate, I guess would be the best word, because you're just greedy. Oh, you're just this, you're just that. No, it's not. Like, look, I can show you the tax assessment. It's public record. We're going up $100 a month on the taxes because for whatever reason, and we have to offset those costs.
Yeah.
Those are actual costs. So we created a brand. We created Cohesion Properties was CO was for Corby, HE for Heather. So we were
nice.
Cohesion. And we were a cohesive team.
I did not know that.
Yes,
yeah.
We worked really well together. And so if we created this brand and if we had a PO box where they were mailing the checks and, the lease didn't say that they were going to write the rent check out to Heather Eshelby, they were going to write it out to Cohesion Properties. And if we had just a little bit of that anonymity or that distance, then we can say like, hey, I'm calling on behalf of management, not I'm your owner and I'm telling you, So just creating that kind of, that layer of distance or professionalism really helped.
Yeah. So the lesson being, you want to have a relationship with your tenants and you want to be nice and you want to help them out. But then you learned that having these difficult conversations is tough.
Yeah. Everything in our business comes back to trust, transparency, relationships. And you cannot see tenants. This is probably controversial, but you can't see them as a paycheck. They're not a paycheck. They are people. And they're covering your mortgage, or sure, they're helping you with your financial independence. But at the end of the day, this is all about relationships. And this is all about keeping people happy, retaining those tenants so that you don't have a costly vacancy or a costly turnover. And you have to establish trust, and you have to have that transparency in terms of just good customer service, just good interactions, and letting them know that you're people, but maybe you're not the owner.
Yeah, definitely. So, and that kind of leads into my next question again. How do you guys manage that today?
Yeah.
And I can definitely see how having a good tenant relationship really helps for the ROI of your clients, because you have clients that you have to answer to and answer their questions and make sure you're managing their property appropriately. So by providing good service to your tenants, you're able to have that cohesive
Yeah.
synergy between the two. Is there any key lessons that you learned back then that you are doing now, other than good client or good tenant relationships?
So the company's goal we're now Boise Turnkey Property Management.
Yep.
We're no longer just Cohesion, but our number one overarching company goal this year is to renew at least 70% of our tenants. So renew 70% of our leases. And industry standard for multifamily is usually in the high 40s, and even single family nationwide, it's usually around 50%. So we're aiming higher, and that is to help with ROI. That is to help with, keeping tenants happy, keeping residents or keeping our owners happy. It seems to be the best area to focus on right now.
I love that.
So,
yeah, because if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And you guys are constantly trying to evolve with the times. There are new things coming out, and your business at the end of the day, you need to make money. Your clients need to make money. Your tenants need to be happy.
Right.
Is there anything else in the early days? I want to talk more about what brought you from managing your properties to managing multiple properties. Like, how do you break through that barrier? Because you're only one person,
right?
Plus Corby, but
right.
You're only one person.
It was really, yeah. Even in the olden days, I was still 80%, and he may have dipped in 20% of the time, because at that point, then he was trying to scale. I know that's a side conversation, but he was trying to scale his real estate side of things. So the biggest thing for us is when we hit a certain number of doors that we were managing for other people, we needed to have a better way to track things. We needed to kind of streamline and have more efficiencies in place. And that our biggest step would be signing over to a professional software that was and it's who we're with today. And it's a very robust software that handles everything from rent collections to screening to advertising, owner payments. Everything is in there. It's the bomb. It's awesome. So that was definitely a leverage phase. And between the time that we signed on with that software, gosh, I feel like our growth just skyrocketed, and we were able to take on more doors with more efficiency, and started adding team members and growing the team instead of it just being me getting those phone calls or Corby as a backup or whatnot. We were able to add more team members and grow, and it's where we are today. Still on that trajectory.
So you would say property management software was one of the biggest levers that you pulled as far as getting time back and implementing systems?
Absolutely.
Is there like a door count that you could recommend to new people starting off? Because you were obviously doing it, sending checks in the mail to yourselves. But is there like an optimal time people should at least consider maybe?
I think for us, it was around probably between 50 and 60 doors when we signed on. It was definitely to that. I kind of imagine it like a raft, right? Like I use this analogy a lot. You don't know when to step off the shore and step onto the raft and fully commit. But I feel like around 50 to 60 doors was probably about that time. In general, there's all sorts of different schools of thought around when you should take the next step or when you should hire another person. But for long-term rentals, what I've heard and what really works well for our company is around 75 doors. That's another one full-time person. And right now we're almost at 300 doors, and we have 3 full-time people and then me. So I'm kind of a full-time person. It just depends on where my energy needs to go.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely a full-time person as far as driving the business forward.
Sure.
I mean,
that's fair. Maybe not working
everybody
in the
needs
business.
a leader. Yeah. Well, there's time to work in the business. There's time to work on the business,
Exactly.
100%. And, having those people that work with you, it allows you to have that infrastructure, to keep growing.
Absolutely.
So
Around 50, 60 doors, I think you said. So for the person who has 10 doors, 5 doors by themselves, maybe they have a couple, 2 or 3 duplexes and a triplex. What would be some advice you would give for them? Just use like Zillow and post it on Zillow for rent, or what does that look like?
I'm not super familiar with the software right now for self-made landlords. I'm truly back in the day, it used to be cozy.co. That was my platform. It was free. It was easy to access. But usually around that time, as long as you have good accounting, so we use QuickBooks, as long as you use good accounting and there's a way, again, from the relational standpoint, as long as your tenants know how to get a hold of you, if maintenance goes awry or there's some sort of, immediate attention that's needed, then you can probably make do with that for quite a bit. Yeah.
I have a little bit to speak on this because I'm kind of there myself.
Sure.
And we kind of have something to talk about with this as well. So we have a duplex in Nampa that my wife and I have been managing for 2 years, I think now. And it was Cozy, right?
I believe it was cozy.co and then it turned into
Cozy.co,
Yep.
Which is what we use. And it was great.
Yeah.
So we only had 2 units and it did all the screening for us. It took all the applications. It does all the bookkeeping. It collects the checks.
Yeah.
It's really great and free. I think they make their money by receiving applications from tenants applying. So I think that's why it allowed it to be free for us. And it worked really great. And we have our bookkeepers. We use QuickBooks as well to manage that. And the hardest thing for us to do was the tenant relationship. Yeah. And it was up to us to decide who we wanted to bring in for a screening process. So I will say that I was the one that was in charge of screening tenants and interviewing them and bringing them in. And I was nowhere near as good as a property manager could have been. We had decent luck and we had some hiccups along the way, but we learned a lot. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned was the last lesson I learned was it's asset management. I was spending a lot of time fixing the place, dealing with the tenants, just to not pay a property manager. Mm-hmm. I still think it's important to do it yourself so that you learn the lessons, but I've gotten so much more time back and I feel more confident that my asset's going to last longer.
Sure.
Because I'm going to have better tenants in. And we actually handed ours over to you.
Yep.
Which was a great experience. Like the onboarding process, especially with Molly, was awesome. So you can definitely tell the amount of systems that property managers have put in because they've learned the lessons. They've had them themselves. They've had the hard tenants.
Yeah.
I know you're going to an HOA hearing today. Those are things that I don't want to deal with anymore.
Right.
Because there are things that I do well.
Right.
That I need to spend my time doing. So those are some of the biggest lessons I've learned when doing it yourself.
I think that it's critical to at least start doing it yourself because then you realize what your blind spots were, right? And you start to realize what your strengths and what maybe you could shore up or what a property manager would bring to the table. And definitely gaining your time back and looking at it as more of asset management is a really good step. So
it is, yeah.
This show would not be possible without the support from our local community. Because of you, we're able to share information from leading professionals like never before. That's why our sponsors at Boise Turnkey Investments and Your Stay B&B have teamed up with the Boise REIN Show. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, they help bring you all the insider information to get you started on your journey today. Back to the show.
Okay, so let's take it one step further. What makes a good property manager? All right, we're at this next level, I'm getting the service that a great property manager provides. What do those services look like? Because I know you're in NARPM, you go to conferences. There's a lot of time you spend in educating yourself. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Especially in Idaho, property management it's not regulated really in any way, shape, or form. You don't have to have a license. You don't have to have any kind of education. You can just hang a shingle and you can be a property manager. And because of that, unfortunately, there are a lot of really bad players. We had an incident yesterday where one of our real estate clients is purchasing a property, I should say. And the previous property manager is refusing to sign over the tenant's security deposit to the new owner, which is ridiculous. Like, that's not your money. That is the tenant's money, and you're supposed to be holding it in trust. What are you talking about? So there are a lot of people that aren't educated or that don't have those types of resources or experiences or communities. The Southwest chapter of NARPM is a great community for people to learn how to be a good player. And they provide educational opportunities. They bring in, we just had a lawyer last month come in and talk about some of the new legislation that was passed this year and how that would impact us, or how you perhaps need to change your lease in order to be in line with the new initiatives, things like that. We go to national conferences. We learn a lot of really great information. What makes a good property manager was the initial question. I think that transparency and I think education those are the two biggest things. How are your property managers educating themselves and staying on top of the latest trends in the industry? Are they getting fair housing training? Are they going to be compliant with all of the HUD regulations and things like this? Education for also the client. That's something that we're starting to bring in a lot more. We're trying to educate our clients on, for example, you have an upcoming turnover. Here's how we handle damages versus wear and tear, and kind of explaining the difference between the two. This is a damage. This is a wear and tear. Yes, the security can cover a damage, but it can't cover wear and tear. That's something that you have to, it's deferred maintenance, essentially. Just educating educating clients ahead of time so that they're aware of, what might be coming down the pike. We don't have hidden fees. We don't have upcharges. We're transparent, and we put as much out there as we can, try to be as honest and operate with integrity.
Well, you guys love teaching first and foremost. I mean, that is your background.
For sure.
And that's one of the biggest things I love about entrepreneurs is they just want to help other people grow. They want to, they're like a rising tide, and they want to raise all the ships too.
Yeah.
And I love that about you guys. It's one of the reasons why we've been with you guys for so long.
Well, thank you.
With that in mind, with that spirit in mind, let's say I am a prospecting client that is a new investor, and I'm calling around to different property management companies to ask them questions in an interview. What would be some good questions to ask when calling some different folks?
Sure. I think that bringing it back to, how do you screen your tenants? How do you screen for possible future residents? That's going to tell you a little bit about what they know about fair housing and the best practices. It's going to tell you about their detail, their level of detail, how focused they are on their policy, their procedure, sticking to a certain script, not showing preference or deviating from that. And also, I think asking them about their maintenance process. Just, how quickly do you typically turn around a maintenance ticket? If a tenant reaches out to you, how quickly will somebody get out to the property? Because the number one thing the reason why tenants don't renew is because of maintenance. The number one thing they report is they weren't attentive enough. They weren't fast enough. They didn't take care of the problems that I had. That's going to affect your renewal rate, which is ultimately going to affect your bottom line. So definitely focusing on that. I would say a third would be, do you mark up your invoices? Am I going to see the actual invoices, or are you padding them? Where are the hidden fees? Where are again, transparency and honesty.
I love that. Because my next question was going to be, how does that translate into ROI for the investor?
Sure. Those all feed into it.
They do.
Yeah.
When you talked about maintenance, like that really, struck a chord with me. You want to keep your tenants in there.
Yeah.
And that's why you're trying to move to a 70% retention rate.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So it actually does help. So would it be a safe thing to say that hiring a property manager, even though you have to pay them the industry standard, whatever they charge, you're going to actually potentially be earning more in certain cases?
Yeah, I would think so. We have had, and we have people that come to us and say, I know what your fee is. I know what your percentage is. My current property manager is charging X percent. Do you think that you would match that? Well, you're coming to me because you have a problem. You have a problem with your current manager. They're upcharging you. They're charging hidden fees to the tenants. They're doing all sorts of other things. They're not responding to the maintenance requests on time. They're coming to us because they have a problem. And we have systems in place to help alleviate that problem. And it's going to cost a little bit more, but in the long run, you're going to regain that without an issue.
Yeah. That's the difference between good property managers and bad property managers. Like, I've seen some bad property managers out there too, and you lose more money than what you're saving,
For sure.
you know?
Stepping
And
over
what are you
dollars
saving?
to
Like,
pick up dimes.
yeah, this property manager charges me $10 less a month.
Yeah.
While they also cost you $800 in maintenance.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Or a costly vacancy. I mean, the cost of turnovers is astronomical now when
Yeah.
you have to repaint a property or when you have to put carpet in. All of those services have gone up
Yep.
significantly.
Yep. So as we move from being your own landlord to managing your own properties to managing other people's properties to treating it like a business and being professional, I know you mentioned that Bigger Pockets is trying to take this to the next level as well.
Sure.
And it's something you just mentioned, we just talked about. So I
Yeah.
would love if you could speak a little bit about this and get people a little up to speed about what they're trying to do with property managers.
Sure. So on the real estate side of things, they have been trying to connect people from the forums to a real estate agent in town, a local real estate agent. So real estate agents have, tried to capitalize on this by saying, I'm a leads, I'll buy leads from you. So Bigger Pockets approached Corby, probably because of the presence that he has.
He posts so much on there.
Yeah, he's very active. So they approached him and they said, hey, we're going to start this new program where you can buy leads for property management as well. And it got us thinking, we have never actually had to pay any marketing to advertise ourselves. We've never had to, it's all been that word of mouth flywheel. It's people referring us, people recommending our services, or tenants saying, I'm really happy, these guys take care of us. We've never had to pay for any kind of marketing before. It's just been organic and kind of handed to us, which is a nice, we work for it.
You do.
But
you guys are true go-givers.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, but I think we're going to give that a shot because we're pretty deep in the community of Bigger Pockets. And, we listen to all the podcasts and read Corby's blogging for them now too.
So is this a new feature that they're bringing on? Is this coming soon?
Yeah. From what I understand, it's supposed to be May 1st is when it all rolls out. So pretty soon.
Yeah. I love this because now people can get on, because I like the realtor aspect of it. When I was going to Florida, I got in Bigger Pockets and I saw who was on, who was giving back to most of the community, who took being a realtor seriously.
Right.
And we hooked up with some people in Florida. This is a great opportunity for property managers because you guys take this just as seriously as everybody else. This is your business.
Right.
And what an awesome way to get connected with powerful people in the community.
Right. And how do you find a reputable property manager?
Yeah.
Hopefully somebody that's vetted through Bigger Pockets and is ready to take some of those questions that we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And now our listeners know what questions to bring them.
Exactly.
That's great. So as we lead into the future, I know you go to conferences across the country. You're part of NARPM. Everybody, the craze is talking about AI. What does the future of that look like to you?
Sure. We use some elements of AI and, maybe they'll help write a property description or something along those lines. But really at the end of the day, Boise Turnkey Property Management strongly feels that this is a relationship business and we're here to support our owners. We're here to support our tenants. We are a real person with a face and an office in town. And that matters. Those relationships matter. And that's what's going to keep people happy and keep coming back to us. So you might be able to tweak a system. You might be able to tighten up or automate a few things. But at the end of the day, it's the relationship that matters. And it's the people. We're in the people business and we're in to establish relationships and communication. And you can't do that through AI.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Heather, you've taken us from managing your first property to managing multiple properties, to becoming a property manager, to helping others. That has to take a toll on your day-to-day living. How do you manage your time? How do you help manage others' time? What is it for you that keeps you going?
Oh, goodness. Okay, definitely. Money can come and go, but time is just always going, right? It's our most precious commodity. We can't get more time. So what works for us is working on time management systems. So I'm a big believer in time blocking. I absolutely set my schedule around time blocks. I have times in the morning where I'm working in the business. I'm putting out those little fires. I'm trying to handle, personnel things. I'm making sure that this client gets this question answered or whatnot. And then in the afternoon, I have a time block for working on the business. And I call that my more creative time. And that's kind of where I'm looking for education, or I'm looking at what I can bring back to our team to further educate them, or different initiatives that we can bring to tenants or to our clients to enrich their experience with us. But then first and foremost, of course, it comes back to having control of your own time. And we very conscientiously have set aside times to walk our children to school every day and to pick them up from school every day. And that's a priority. That's a number one. We're there for our family first. We're there to be with our children, and we don't shelter our kids. If we have to take a really awkward call, they might hear it. They might, overhear us trying to negotiate something, or I can't tell you how many times our children have come to walk through properties with us. In fact, just yesterday, we were filming a property, and my middle decided that he was going to do the intro for the video. So welcome to the property, and it was super cute. But you don't shelter your kids. You involve them, and they see you working hard, and they see the hustle, and that's important. Teaching that work ethic from the start.
That builds great value, core values in kids. I love that's so cool. I hope I can do that with my kids one day.
You will.
When they get to that age. What happens when somebody tries to take your time?
Good question. Bunkers. We are strong believers in bunkers. In the office, we have set aside bunker times. So 9 to 10:30, for example, is kind of more of a free flow time. So we know that is time where if I need to go ask one of our teammates a question, I can go interrupt them, and that's free flow. But then we've set aside other chunks of time throughout the day where imagine that you're walking into a cubicle and those are walls that you can't permeate. And setting up those bunkers is really critical. And it doesn't matter if you don't have an office that you're working from, then set a bunker around maybe turning your ringer off for 2 hours of the afternoon so that you are protecting your time and that people can't interrupt you. Of course, life happens. Sometimes things might pop up, but in general, if you can create those bunkers and prioritize that, this is an important initiative for me. And so I'm going to set aside time, and I am going to protect this time, and just make that as public as you can. Like, I'm not available from 3 to 3:30 because I'm walking my children home and I need to focus on them solely. Then those kind of things they'll fall into place. And if you do it enough, it becomes a habit, and then it doesn't take a lot of effort.
When you do it enough, it becomes a habit. You're absolutely right. Another question, in your own opinion, I have is, how do you prioritize the best use of your time?
Yes, that can be difficult, especially as you're scaling. Is the best use of your time going out and performing all of the drive-bys on the properties that you have? And I learned very quickly that, especially with, a newborn or a 2-year-old, if I had 40 properties that I needed to drive by, just do an exterior survey, is that the best use of my time? I don't think so. So knowing when to outsource or delegate or hire for help is pretty critical. And knowing what you're good at, being able to stay in your lane. If you're really good at screening tenants and sticking to procedure, and you can see the little nuances in their application that might be a red flag, and dig a little deeper, then that's what you should be doing. If you need to hire a property manager to do that for you so that you can focus on something else that you're better at, then do that.
Yeah. Auditing your time is super important.
Right.
And you just gave us a bunch of tools on how to do that.
I hope so.
And what I found is, if you can write down, what you do every day and how much time you spend doing it, that's your audit that you can then decide, okay, what is earning me the most money and what is not? Is it something that I'm great at and I love doing? Or is it something that I hate but I still have to do because it makes the money? And that gives you the description of the things that will help buy your time back.
Right.
If you can delegate to elevate, and it doesn't even mean like putting stuff off. It's deciding like, I'm going to delegate this person with these tasks so I can do these tasks. That's the delegate. So you both elevate and enjoy and love what you do.
Right.
Hi, I'm Jonna Weber, the founder of the Boise Real Estate Investor Network. Thanks for being a listener of our Boise REIN Show, where our incredible pro members share their personal stories and areas of expertise with our listeners. If you're enjoying our show, you are going to love our Boise REIN community. Our mission is to inspire, connect, and equip you to create wealth and freedom for yourself and your family. We invite you to join us as a member at Boise REIN today at boiserein.com.
Heather, thank you for coming on today.
Absolutely.
I know we talked about a lot today, and I want to close this out with what's one thing that our audience can do today that will get them closer to their goals tomorrow.
Sure. One thing that I really strongly advocate for is just being able to say no. I know we talked about bunkers earlier, but along with that is being able to say no. Either if it's a task that you're not good at, a task that you don't enjoy, delegate to elevate, right people, right seats, all of the buzzwords that we can throw in there. But being able to say no and staying in your lane is absolutely critical to taking that next action. And if you can say no to these 20 things that were distractors, you're going to be able to hyper-focus and taking that action, taking that step forward. So just being able to be okay with that. And sometimes it feels like you're letting somebody down or you're not taking on that extra responsibility. But at the end of the day, you need to take action for you.
Saying no to somebody is actually saying yes to you.
There you go. Yeah. I love that.
Yes. Well, Heather, thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you, get a hold of you, where can they find you?
They can drill down on our website, which is boiseturnkey.com, and you can find me as an agent there. You can always call the office. Boise Turnkey is 208-900-9660.
Nice. Yep.
Email heather@boiseturnkey.com or heather@cohesionproperties.com because we still can't let go of the Corby Heather cohesive situation. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for coming on. And thank you guys for listening today. It's been a pleasure having you. I know I certainly enjoyed having this conversation today. So if you liked the show, think about giving us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one.